Welcome to the Fertility Podcast, another bonus episode in partnership with the Fertility Show. I mentioned last Wednesday when I shared a conversation I'd had with Laura Biggs, the show director, and urologist Jonathan Ramsey, that I was going to be sharing another episode with you because ahead of the event, which is the 1st to the 3rd of November in London, I got to speak to some of the people, some of the experts who are going to be at the show, and I wanted to share them with you. It was going to be one episode, but it was a bit long, and so you've got two for the price of one. It's almost a bog off. And in this episode, we're focusing on the mind, body and soul, which is a big emphasis, I think, at the Fertility Show, both with the conversations that are going to be happening with Jessica Hepburn's Fertility Fest and the Let's Talk stage that I'm hosting. We want to ensure that emotional support is a prominent part in whatever you're doing, whether you've started treatment, whether you're mid-treatment, whether you're post-treatment and working out what's happening next. You need support. You need to know how to manage what you're going through, who to talk to, and just not try and work it out on your own because it's too much. And there's many different ways that you can have that in your world. My guests that you're going to hear from, one is Henrietta Norton, who is a nutritional therapist. Her talk is all about the importance of balancing your hormones, and she explains her background, her dealing with endometriosis as she was growing up and how that led her to understand more about nutrition and how it can help your body. And I'm really fascinated by her work, especially the way that she really focuses on like natural products and them being in their purest state in the supplements that she makes. You're also going to hear from Dr. Sandeep Mani, who is the clinical director of the Origin Fertility Clinic in India. And he talks about the importance of the mind-body connection during fertility treatment. Now, before you go, yeah, whatever, don't dismiss, because I think it's really interesting where he's coming from. The importance of meditation, the importance of giving yourself some headspace whilst dealing with all of this, whilst going through treatment, knowing different ways that you can cope if things go wrong is so important, and I think he explains it really well. So I hope you find this interesting. Listen to the end to get details of the show notes. Be sure to rate, review, subscribe and share the Fertility Podcast. And if there's somebody that you think would really benefit from coming to the show, or maybe just listening to this podcast to get an idea of the kind of conversations that are happening at the show, do let them know, because there's a lot of us in this fertility world, in the TTC community, but there's so many more people that aren't, and we want to find them and bring them in with open arms and a big cuddle, knowing that you're not alone through all of this. So I'm now going to welcome Henrietta Norton, who is the founder of Wild Nutrition, to talk a bit more about the importance of nutrition when it comes to your fertility. Henrietta, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Natalie.
And I've been keen to talk to you for some time, having used your products and loved your products and seen your books and the recipes that you share. I had one of your juices the other day that you share on your blog. And I'm really interested to talk about how you came to be in this world, because it was from your own personal experience dealing with endometriosis, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I mean, it feels in many ways like the seed was sown many years before that, because whilst all my contemporaries at school were having sort of wagon wheels, I was having kind of dried banana chips. So I was brought up around that world of, it's important to look after your body. From the age of about, 7, 8, I was experiencing, digestive concerns and tiredness. And then when I started menstruating, I had an awful experience right from the get-go, and went through 10, 15 years of various prognosis, diagnosis. And it was when I was in my early 20s that I went to a nutritionist. I had a light bulb moment of understanding how deeply our food and our lifestyle can affect our hormonal balance, and was subsequently diagnosed with endometriosis. And suddenly everything made sense. Everything that I'd been experiencing made sense. So I became very passionate about spreading that message and spreading the results, or the experience that I had was so positive that I wanted that to be, available to everybody and anybody. Because when I was diagnosed with endometriosis, I was very, in no uncertain terms, told that I was very unlikely that I would be able to have my own children naturally. And I was so determined to change that prognosis that I kind of did a deep dive into the science, particularly around sort of what was then deemed alternative health, but what we now know as natural health, and nutrition, and the impact that can have on changing things around.
Let's just talk for a sec about your endometriosis, because I know you described the pain as you basically passing out from the pain. And I know from different conversations I've had with people on the podcast that diagnosis can take some time. You talked about it there as if it didn't take that long to diagnose. What kind of time frame from you going and having these conversations to then it being given a name? How long a period was that?
Oh, I mean, that was 10 years. 10 years plus.
That was a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it was, that was a real kind of snapshot of the journey, but it was very, very prolonged and varying diagnoses as well. There were from the age of 14 when I started menstruating right until my mid-20s. I was diagnosed with all sorts of different things, but the kind of common theme throughout all of it was this extreme menstrual pain. I think what's really interesting, this is probably a wider conversation about society and more of a sociological issue or observation, is that why is it that it takes women that period of time? Because it's not just about, there's a lot of talk about awareness within the medical industry, but actually it's also about a woman's acceptance of that discomfort. I mean, I think it's sort of almost culturally conditioned for, I was told so many times that you just experience bad period pains, and this is an anti-inflammatory for you to take. And I know now, having worked with hundreds of women that I'm certainly not alone in that experience.
Now, you talked about going to see a nutritionist and that changed your life, despite being brought up in an environment where food and healthy food was obviously very prominent in what you were eating. What changed at that point? Was it that it was related to what was going on hormonally?
I think there were a number of things. So the thing for me was primarily that I was very nutrient deprived. So I thought that I was eating a relatively healthy diet, but actually I realised I was depriving myself of key groups. So for me in particular, I was very, very deprived in the essential fatty acid group. There's a pathway in the liver that deals with estrogen clearance that relates to gut health as well, and elimination through the gut. And those two areas were very, very sluggish for me, which I now know, from my own research, is partially influenced by genetics, but also is very much governed by what you eat and lifestyle as well.
And when it comes to lifestyle, and this is what you're going to be talking about at the Fertility Show, because you're talking about what stress is doing to your hormones. We know that we're all time poor. We're all constantly trying to do a zillion things. And when it comes to trying to conceive, we are putting stress on ourselves to achieve it, but also denying ourselves from a dietary point of view. Is that something you see quite often, that people, when they come to you saying, well, I'm eating healthily, like you realise they're actually stripping quite a lot out in the stress of trying to conceive?
Enormously so. I think one of the things that I see, sort of my role as a nutritional therapist became less about because I think can be a focus on nutrition about what to cut out that might be causing an issue. Actually, it's as much about what you need to put back in. It's about really nourishing and restoring the systems in the body, because we are an interconnected web of systems. You can't look at one area without also looking at all the other areas. So we know that, for example, the endocrine system is deeply interrelated with the immune system and the digestive system and the detoxification system. But it is also now, with this exponential growth of research around mind-body medicine, we know that there is a very measurable effect between what we think and what we receive as stress in the body, and the impact that has on all of those different systems, including the reproductive system. And what I was seeing a lot, and why this has become a kind of a focus area for me latterly, is because I've now seen, I've been a nutritional therapist for it's actually about 14 years now. And I've just seen this situation time and time again where people were saying, I'm eating and they may be eating a textbook type diet, but actually the way that they're living their life and this stress that they're exposed to is actually having an impact on how well their body is communicating with that food, how well they are digesting it, how well they are eliminating what is no longer needed. Stress is a very kind of a popular buzz term now, as is mindfulness and meditation, all those things. Those terms can be very patronizing, but there are some stresses that we can't get away from. I'm not talking about necessarily busting a gut running from traffic jam to school pickup to, job, meeting or whatever. It can also be things where it can be a physical imbalance, so a physical stress, whether it's a food allergy or a blood sugar imbalance. But it also can be, traumas like adverse childhood events or financial, very, very real financial concerns for people, which aren't just about whether or not they can afford a cappuccino, but actually a lot more pronounced than that. So stress means different things to different people, and I think the thing is, it's one of those things that we can't necessarily avoid, but there are things that we can do to improve our resilience or reaction to it. And what we do know about the research in mind-body medicine is that how we react to those events has a very measurable effect on our physiology. So can have a very real effect on how well we produce certain key hormones for reproduction, for example.
Now, when it comes to when people are coming to you for your advice, are they more likely to have tried and failed and then they've realised that they need to really take this seriously? Or are we being proactive enough? Because I do think that there is an element where we don't really start to pay as much attention as we should until there's been some element of failure or there's been some frustration in the process, not really. And I'm talking obviously about trying to conceive. So whether it's you've tried some treatments or you've been trying for a period of time and then you've started reading more and learning more. Are you finding people are becoming more proactive as word is spreading about this type of work and the benefits of it? And there's more evidence, because a lot of people, if they are going through a scientific process to conceive, they want evidence-based information, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt, I'm definitely seeing an increase in women that are being more proactive. I am not seeing so much of an increase in couples being proactive. And right. I think that's a wider question. There is also a window of that proactivity. So it still seems to be, we are going to start trying for a baby next September. We're going to be starting to try for a baby in 6 months' time. So I want to do everything that I can. And that's a really, really great window to work on preconceptual health. However, fertility preservation starts when we start menstruating, actually. And it's about looking after yourself. It's not a sprint. We have to keep on nourishing ourselves throughout our life. And that window of being proactive and working on preconception can actually be a lot earlier than people think.
And also, I know you talk about how changes in diet have a significant impact on a healthy pregnancy in 80% of couples. Do you think people realise that implication of their actions? I mean, you'd hope that we would, but so often people talk about eating what they like when they're pregnant, which I think might happen more so if getting pregnant has been easier than maybe when you've struggled to conceive. I know that I was, quite strict in the run up. I was adamant that I wasn't going to have that, and I wasn't going to drink, and all these different. And then during my pregnancy, I was trying to be as good as I could be.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that I think that there are certain people that will feel more engaged in that process than others, and from just observational kind of evidence that I see in clinic, it is those that have had perhaps more obstacles in the way of conception. They got really thoroughly engaged in the process before they even conceived. I think there's a lot more work to be done. I do say in the book there is now substantial evidence to show the benefits of eating well in pregnancy, and that being deprived in certain nutrients, for example, or exposed to a high level of chronic stress or acute stress during pregnancy can also affect the health outcomes of that baby later on in life. That is not to say, the thing is, I think there's a huge amount of guilt and fear and pressure that can be put onto to women that are trying to conceive and pregnant. It's not to do that, but it's just an awareness about what we can do to further improve the health of our child going forward, not just to birth it.
Now, we've talked a lot about women, and obviously when we're talking about a heterosexual couple who are trying to conceive, there is the man involved. Do you get the chance to talk to many men? I mean, generally, I know men are more reluctant to step forward and address the fertility issue. What's your experience?
My experience is that not enough of them are. Word is out, and I think that there's probably more men. Maybe I'm not seeing it quite so much, but certainly it's a partnership. It's a two-way thing. And in fact, actually, I've been working with a few clients recently who are still my primary client, even though the subfertility is on the male side. Mm-hmm. So it's the woman that is coming to me for information on their husband. I think there is still a lot of work to be done there.
When it comes to a healthy lifestyle, ultimately we want it to be from our foods as much as possible. And I've talked to different nutritional therapists on this podcast before about things like eating a rainbow, and we talked earlier about not cutting too much out. But when it comes to supplement, you created your food grown supplements, which are high grade ingredients that the body can absorb easily and use effectively. And I still think we have such a misunderstanding about supplementation, in that we might chuck a load in and rattle around a bit without really understanding what's good and what's right for us. I've tried to address issues about folate and folic acid on this podcast before, and how your body uses them. But it can seem quite a minefield. And I just wondered if people are listening and they're thinking, yeah, I really want a good supplement and I'm happy to spend the money. I want to know the best place to start. Is it as straightforward as you could start with a really good multivit from somebody like you, or really you should start by having some tests and finding out whether there is a deficiency? What would your top tips be?
I think quality is everything, and you touched on it there. It's just like food. Getting the right quality. It's not about how much you eat, it's about the quality of what you eat. That is so important. And not all supplements are equal. So choose the best grade, food grade that is available to you. I think starting with a really good multi-nutrient that is geared towards preconceptual health, if it's preconception, or pregnancy, if it's pregnancy, is a really good starting point for most people. I think if you have the opportunity to go deeper, have either see a nutritional therapist or get some tests done to look at your levels of, say, zinc or B6 or vitamin D and omega fats I mentioned earlier. That's the next step up, and then you can add on to that multi-nutrient with the specific nutrients that you need more of. One of the key ones that often gets overlooked, probably not quite so much during preconception, but certainly during pregnancy, is taking a really good omega-3. Most people would, I would say without exception, a really good source of omega-3, at least 400 milligrams of DHA is really important during both pregnancy and preconception. And if in preconception, absolutely for the man as well, because we know that increases sperm motility, it creates the tail in the sperm. So it's incredibly important during preconception for men as well.
Do you think people realise the amount of time that they need to be putting these things into action?
I think that there is very much a split party. The ideal window is 6 months, minimum 3 months. But we do live in a culture that wants the instant fix now. So we tend to think, right, I'm going to start looking at preconception. So, I want instant results. Actually, when it comes to supplements, our supplements are clinically proven to be very, very well absorbed and very well used by the body, even at very low doses. So more does not equal more. And you do tend to feel the effects quite early on, but the standard period of time is around 12 weeks for you to know whether or not a supplement is supporting you or not. So you wait for those 12 weeks to come up before you know whether or not it's making a difference.
And if you're kind of tracking things on your own, what are the key things that you can check to see if it's making a difference?
There are certain things that you can look for. Your menstrual cycle, whether or not it feels more stable, whether you're getting any breast tenderness, that your cycle is more regular, or if it is less clotty. That's a really big one. But also just in general in terms of kind of energy, because don't forget, preconception is a hugely energetically hungry process. And so if you don't have enough of the nutrients to support your mitochondria to produce energy, the mitochondria in the cells to produce energy, then you will be feeling very tired as well. So things like your energy levels are a really good measurement for how well something is working for you, how well you're sleeping, and digestion as well.
Really interesting stuff. Henrietta, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
So I'm now going to welcome Dr. Sandeep Mani, who is the Director of Origin Fertility in Mumbai. He's a consultant of reproductive medicine there, and he will be at the Fertility Show talking about the role of meditation and communication in the success of fertility treatment, which is something that is very refreshing to hear a clinic putting emphasis on. Dr. Sandeep, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Natalie. It's a pleasure talking to you.
So tell me a bit about Origin first and foremost, and the ethos of your clinic.
Basically, I was in the UK many years, and then at the time when I became a consultant there, I chose to return to India because in India, the rules and regulations relating to fertility are very favorable, and you can do a very nice job. And there's a lot of freedom as well, egg donation sort of options, the number of embryos that can be transferred. So when I came here, I established this clinic. And the initial first month, I decided to call it as an international clinic, because the vision was to actually not just to help the local Indian people, but to be able to serve the entire globe, really. The origin in very short time started seeing patients from Africa, UK, USA, Australia. We have babies in almost 20 countries right now, Natalie. So today, we take pride that we are not just about treatment, but we really want to reach out to our patients, our couples, because we understand what emotions they go through. And I have actually realized something very solid, very concrete that I wish to share with you today in this chat, which will actually transform lives. That's what I honestly believe. So Origin has a very different approach other than just the technology, the medications, the science. It has a holistic approach, as you put it, the mind, the spiritual angle, the role of communication. These three is really the strength of any fertility clinic.
So when your patients are coming to you, is this a part of the conversation from the outset, that this is your approach and that they need to engage with this way of thinking as well?
Well, as you know, this day and age, people are living a very different kind of lifestyle. And if you start saying these things, even though I'm a FRC OG, returned from London, and if I start saying this may not go very well, because there's a very little understanding. I'm sorry, I'm putting it bluntly. There's very few people understand why these things are important. So these things are done without necessarily emphasizing that's what you're doing. For example, if a couple comes to you, a new couple, you know that they've been to many clinics, maybe they have had a treatment over years and years, maybe a few IVFs have failed. So when they sit in front of you, you would listen to them firstly, then you would analyze their papers, you would know what has happened, and the first job for me is to check and detect where the problem lies. Now, the next question from me to them is, so what seems to be the problem? You've been through treatment for 5 years, 10 years. Where do you think is the problem? And what option seems to be the next one in front of you? These two questions I ask the couple, which actually takes them back a little, because they seem to think, Dr. Mane, we are here to know that from you. So we are not expected to know that. And I said, no, that's not how it is. You are here after so many years of treatment. I want to know your view first, and then I will explain everything to you. So from there on starts the process. So I explain to them once, and by the way, you'll be amazed, at least in my clinic here in India, 99% of the couples are not exactly sure what has gone wrong, what treatment was done for what logical reason, and therefore what seems to be the next level of treatment, be it IVF, be it egg donation. But the clarity, that's the part which is missing. And the moment you give that to them, you connect to them. You really get a direct connection, and they can see where you come from. And then from there on, whatever you speak, they are able to understand and listen. And that consultation is an hour, almost an hour each time. So when you talk about whether we do it in this manner, yes, the mind needs time. Communication needs time. And if it is all rushed and done in 5 minutes, you cannot connect to people in a very short span of time. So yes, this is how we do these things without them realizing that actually I'm going into their minds and helping them understand and making them stronger to deal with whatever they have to face next.
I mean, sadly, I'm not surprised that people are coming to you without awareness of what's gone wrong and what the next steps could be, because that's a conversation that I have quite often with people that I talk to with my podcast, that they might have had a failed cycle somewhere and then be none the wiser as to why. And that follow-up is so key, isn't it?
It is,
in
really.
The conversations that people have. You're going to be talking about the role of meditation and communication, and I'm quite just keen to talk about that. When you're going through treatment and you're looking around, especially on social media, and there's, on the one hand, there's the, yes, we know that we need to try and de-stress, but it is such a stressful thing, an overwhelming thing to go through, and often we're wanting proof of what we're doing. When we're talking about meditation and fertility treatment, are you saying that you need to try and meditate every day, realistically, to give yourself some headspace while you're going through this treatment? Is it that simple? Or, I mean, you just
No.
explained that there's like...
No,
Okay.
it's not that simple actually, really. But that's how it should be in a way. But let me come to that. You mentioned social media, and that's my biggest worry, I can tell you. People are now going to the social media looking for answers to their problems. And when they go there not realizing what to take, what not to take, it's completely wrong information in most cases without being in the right context. Now, they get so further stressed and worried. I tell you, yesterday just had a patient who came to me, who rang me, in fact, and said, my wife is very stressed, Dr. Mani. I said, what happened? Oh, she's wanting to know what happens with the bicoordinate uterus. And I said, I looked into the file and I said, nowhere it has been mentioned there's a bicoordinate uterus. We've been talking about a possible arcuate uterus, and that probably is not the case even. That's also not defined. And he says, no, it was bicoordinate. I said, have you been to the internet? Have you been looking at pictures on the internet? And then they got something completely unrelated to them. And they were very stressed. Right. Now, this is what I tell you, honestly, every alternate couple I'm finding stressed. One of the young couples tried only for 1 year. And the husband says to me, Dr. Mani, can you please tell her to relax a little? I said, what happened? Well, wherever I go on my tours, she would tell me, this is the day. You need to be back on this day. We need to have relations on these days, because otherwise we won't have a pregnancy. And I said, come on, you people are young. It's all normal. All the tests are good. This mental mindset is not good for you. And this is the problem of social media. So when you mention that, I should urge everyone to stay away from that. Your doctors are there for that. Your doctors are there to answer your questions. So I tell my patients, please come here and ask me. That information will be much more relevant and useful for you than your stress on the internet, because I don't know what is going in your mind. I don't know what all sites you've visited. I don't know what all videos you've seen. So it's a hard job for me to get that out of your mind. So coming to your point, whether the meditation is required on a daily basis, is it that simple that people can do meditation? I'm going to present this.
I'm not talking about, and I'm not talking about by meditating you will achieve a positive pregnancy. I just meant getting your head around what you need to be doing. That's what I meant by the simplicity of it.
Well, actually, you may not be too far away, too wrong by saying that meditation can help you achieve a pregnancy. Now, don't get me wrong. Let me clarify. When a couple is trying for a baby, let's ask a very simple question. Why does a human being like to have a child? A very basic question. Is it just because everybody else is having a child? Or is it because there is an inbuilt urge in every human being to grow? And a woman, a man, and a couple and a partner would definitely want to grow in form, and that's where the spirituality angle comes. And spirituality is about humans wanting to grow, be it in the job, be it in the salary, be it in the cars or the houses or power or whatever. This is a typical human tendency to want to grow. And when they want to grow and they can't grow, then our education systems all over the world have not been able to give humans that perception towards life as to how to handle your mind when these stressful situations arise. And now we are talking of conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So the stress element is when the intelligent conscious mind is trying to go to the internet, is trying to go to the doctor, and is trying to find out answers to their questions as to why is my deep desire not getting satisfied. There the stress comes. And when that stress comes the role of meditation to cool your mind, to calm your mind. And therefore, this meditation technique, which is not yet established, even the experienced people are not able to do these things properly. There are various techniques, which is a tough job, but our education system should have given us that. And if our minds were able to do meditation and relax and calm down, then the body starts believing in itself. The mind tells the body that you're fine, you will be successful. It gives it the confidence, the belief that we are going to do the job. Then be it the IUI, be it the laparoscopy, be it the IVF, the human body is linked to the mind, and if the mind is happy, comfortable, relaxed, the body performs better. That's where we are coming, that the meditation helping the mind can actually help your body perform better. And even if it doesn't, Natalie, even if it doesn't perform better, there will be a ability to cope with the stress of that situation, ability to keep going. And one thing I can tell you, Fertility is in a lot of cases is self-made. I'm sorry, I'm not being sarcastic. It is human lifestyle that has caused a lot of these problems, and the treatment, if it is done systematically and progressively, almost all cases tend to get resolved. Almost all.
Okay, well let's talk about the ones that don't, just to kind of play devil's advocate, because as somebody who has spent the year, for the first year in my life, focusing on meditation, I've seen the benefits. I know it's a practice that you have to spend a lot of time on, and so I'm all for it being part of what you do day to day in your whatever's going on with you. And in terms of infertility and going through this, I think it's massively relevant.
Absolutely.
However, for the people who might be listening to this, who might be at a place where they've had failed treatment, and it might be something that is physically wrong, whether it's a genetic something or it's a part of them that just isn't working. I know it's a really hard one to hear then when you're saying do this type of mind work, and I'm being devil's advocate on purpose with you, because I think it's a really interesting argument about the power of the mind. When we're talking about a patient who might have gone to XYZ and had failed cycles and is really maybe at the last chance, and maybe only the next option is donation, whether it's egg donation or surrogacy, but at that point, are you still able to say that this mind work is relevant?
Let me put that statement in the right context. When I said that when we do treatment systematically and progressively going ahead as necessary, then we are not necessarily saying that it is with your own eggs and own sperms, with your own womb each and every time. When I say that when we have to progress further, let's for a moment take it this way. Somebody has had IVF failed 5 times, and it is very clear, let's say for a moment, that AMH value, which reflects the egg capacity, let's for a moment assume it's on a lower side, and we know that the eggs are weak. Let's take it that way. There, the situation is to keep trying again and again and again and keep suffering, or to take an option of an egg donation. Now, that's what I meant, that when this decision when a couple is faced with this decision, this is where the mind power comes into picture. This is where the ability to say, yep, this is where I draw a line. I do not want to suffer further in my life. Nobody's going to give me extra 10 years to live my life further just because I lost my 10 years in this treatment. So there comes the power of the mind to take that call. Whether I can take the donation, whether I can go for surrogacy, whether I can travel to India for treatment. These are decisions people have to take. And if their minds are very strong and clear, that is when they are able to take these choices. That is what I meant, that further down, treatment is almost successful in all. Let me give you an example, Natalie. There was a young girl who came to me at 21 years age, Natalie, yesterday in the clinic with her mother. And the mother says to me, Dr. Mane, she does not have a womb. Now, she cannot have a pregnancy. Now, can you give some miraculous solution to this? And I looked at the young girl and I said, well, is life all about marriage? Is life all about a baby? Is life all about my womb? Is that how you would like to look? You are a smart young lady. You've got a whole life ahead of you. Can we live life happily still? Is the purpose of living happiness or just one particular aim? And the girl looked at me and I could see her thinking hard. Because up until now in India, typically, as you know, a young 21-year-old not having a womb would probably find it difficult to find a partner, would probably find it difficult to have a happy married life, and that's what was going through her mind. And it just completely changed the perspective of that lady. And I said, you could adopt a child in time. You could even consider surrogacy. Maybe your try and transplant kind of procedures might come in place where, so why are you suffering today by your imagination of how my life will get affected? So this is what I'm trying to say. Management of the mind, the meditation, and giving power to the person to control their emotions and feelings. This is the key job of a fertility expert, not just IVF.
You're talking to the converted, because I totally agree with you, and I was just curious as to how you would maybe answer some of the critics about this. But I wholeheartedly think that having this approach from the outset, when you embark on this treatment, like you say,
yes,
being able to cope with whatever outcome is only going to serve you better.
Yes.
What I'm curious though is, are you predominantly then having these kind of conversations with women, or are you finding that men are open to doing this work as well?
You know what? You'll be amazed how they love it when we discuss these matters. When, for example, let me give an example. There's an egg donation you mentioned, and if somebody needs an egg donation, then obviously I have a tissue box next to me, I have a glass of water next to me, without which I wouldn't start any consultation. So I know when that topic comes out to that stage, tears will flow, emotions will flow, and that would disturb the complete, mindset. Now, when I looked into their eyes and I say, yes, I don't like telling you this. I don't like giving you this option. You don't like to hear this. I'm so sorry. But this is the reality of our lives. This is the reality where we stand. Now you have two choices. One, continue trying with your own eggs because that's how everybody wants to think. And I'm so sorry, suffering, you've already suffered enough, and do you really, really, really want to continue this suffering? And then she would look at me and start thinking, and even the husband and would say, well, no, Dr. Mane, we have had enough of all this now. Well, in that case, we've got three options. One, stop everything and be happy and learn to be happy. Doesn't matter if you don't have a child. I'm sorry, it's an extreme option. Option two, consider adoption. Again, another extreme option. I know these are not right or wrong, but are you both able to cope with these two options? No, Dr. Mane, that's not an option. Then in that case, I'm sorry, we have an option in between, which we try. Egg donation is an option, which I'm sorry, I don't like, but is an option. You will have a healthy baby and you'll have the experience of life that you're wanting to have. And then, by the way, I said, when you say my eggs, what does that mean? We are made of eggs and sperms from two different people. They are made of eggs and sperms of two other people. And when I talk of Dr. Sandeep Mane, who am I talking about? Dr. Sandeep Mane is an individual made of two individuals, and those two were of another two. And if you go up the tree, God knows how many thousands would be added into Dr. Sandeep Mane. When you give them the right perspective, suddenly they think, yes, what am I going after? Why am I so insistent? And then that might, and not that we don't want to or do these things for people who don't need them, but what I'm saying is when the time comes, when they are now at a juncture where they have to think, giving them the right perspective makes all the difference in these decision makings. And like you say, the males are equally happy because they are struggling to help their wife. They're struggling to help their partner to cope with these problems because she's the one who is going through so much suffering, and the male is only supporting most of the times.
How are you finding your approach is met by your peers when you talk about the mind focus that you put on your consultations?
At the moment, I'm focused more on our patients. At the moment, I am focused more about the role of this approach on our work. And at the moment, I do not have concrete data yet. Absolutely 200% confident in my mind that when I do this research, which I'm about to start soon, then there will be enough data that will completely transform the approach towards fertility treatment. I have no doubt in my mind. And by the way, I'm not saying medicines is useless. I'm not saying technology is useless. I'm not even saying science has no role. I'm saying science cannot do this by itself. You need human minds to be managed. This is not just the body creating eggs and sperms and babies. This is human mind, happiness, peace, joy. That's what we are dealing with, So that needs a spiritual and meditation approach.
Well, thank you for explaining. And I know it's going to be a fascinating chat at the Fertility Show. So we look forward to hearing more of it. Thank you for your time, Dr. Sandeep.
Thank you, Natalie. I hope it is helpful. Thank you.
Right, the show notes for this episode are thefertilitypodcast.com/mind-body connection. There you'll get details of Henrietta when she's talking and Dr. Mani as well. You will also see links to the Fertility Show website in case you're on the move, but you can go there right now if you want, thefertilityshow.co.uk, to get tickets for the different seminars or for the whole weekend. It'd be so lovely to get to see you there. If you come, do say hello to me at the Let's Talk Fertility stage. If you want to get in touch on social media, you can follow me at FertilityPoddy on Insta or Twitter. And I'll be sharing another episode with you as normal on Monday.